Hello and welcome back to my channel. Glad that you've tuned in. And today I'm back with part 2 of my Black Panther series. And I've got to say the feedback on my first video has been just phenomenal. Thank you for those of you who've commented, who've subscribed. I have loved just having this conversation with you. And I feel like there's so much more to say. That's why I've made this part 2. And I know you're gonna love it. But before we go into this, be sure to click subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep you up to date with any new uploads if you haven't done so. So let's go into this one right now. Take me to Wakanda. So the moment is here, and for some of you it already came. The long-awaited Black Panther movie has arrived. So the title of this video is inspired by themes in the Black Panther film, and in this time we have together, I hope to give you my insight into this. A great many discussions have been evoked by this movie, and it has been from all corners, and for the most part has been overwhelmingly positive. This movie has the underlying fact that though it is a work of fiction, it draws heavily from the continent, its history, and its people. This film is significant, much more than your average popcorn flick. It has begged many a question, but the one that stood out to me was, what if, just what if Africa had escaped the assault of colonialism? What if our forefathers somehow had continued on uninterrupted? What could it have been? Africa, as we know, has had its share of overwhelmingly negative perception over the years, in coverage by mainstream media, by stereotypes in films, books, documentaries, and by some biased historians as well. But we with a more fuller understanding know better. I said in my last video, and I will reiterate it here, that the true picture of the continent emerging now is proving to be one of an ever-improving and ever-hopeful and a flourishing Africa. These clips I am showing you will be a welcomed confirmation to some, yet to some of you who have been continually barraged with one narrative from the continent, you may feel like the images are so impossible to you at first that you have to suspend your disbelief in order to accept this video for what it is. And hopefully, I have faith you'll come around. And my hope is that next time you will question the negative images presented to you about the continent before they become embedded. So I was watching an interview where the question was asked, what if Wakanda was real and you could go there? What would excite you the most about the place? One answer given was that they would luxuriate in the abundance of culture. Yet another said that he would like to have some of the new tech. As I pondered this interesting question posed by this young reporter, who I noticed had a childlike wonderment and even a slight sense of nervous energy about him, as he suggested such a remarkable thing, it suddenly amazed me, as I considered that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had created Black Panther in a time that wasn't as easy or welcoming. It was really going against the grain. It was against conventional thought associated with Africa at that time. It was a preposterous notion that a work of fiction centered on a regal, intelligent, strong king leading the world's most technologically advanced nation could, wait for it, be African. So thinking back to that question by that young reporter, that put a smile on my face. What if one could go to Wakanda? Indeed, the whole conversation and the endless possibilities it could birth, both in creativity, art, and in practical life, amazed me. This film was already inspiring people to a sense of a type of a dream for a better and more connected and advanced world. Take me to Wakanda. Then it occurred to me, what if, just what if we saw parallels of Wakanda in African culture today? And yes, not only today, but in African kingdoms and history. There are many African nations through millennia who have attained to the Wakandan dream. And I am just going to coin this term right here. A term that for me signifies a community or nation rooted in culture that has the experience of giant leaps in technological advancements while being deeply spiritual and never losing sight of the humanity of one another. So yes, we have had they who thousands of years ago achieved many of these targets, and while not perfect in all their achievements, their feats were so mind-boggling that they have spawned tales in myth and film. But what would it have been like to walk among them, What if you could do so now or in the near future? I know what my answer to that question would be. Take me to Wakanda. The Wakandan dream has made me consider deeply the happenings in our world. It has made us ask meaningful questions, stirring up a desire to understand how we can make this world a place that reflects our better selves. This film has in fact become a much-needed avenue for people to have genuine conversations. For starters, I rejoice in the fact that an entire generation of children will now know a superhero and society modeled on something once tangible, but lost for a time. Their young imaginations sparked will lead to endless possibilities as they light up the world as young creators in the arts, sciences, and on and on. This will be for years to come. Don't underestimate inspiration. An entire generation of children will not know what it feels like to not see themselves reflected back on them. Just think. So I'm glad we are being introduced to T'Challa and the kingdom of Wakanda. Yet now, invigorated by this film, a new goal has emerged: to take down negative perceptions and narratives of Africa and people of African descent all over the world who through the years, even through retelling of our history, had been reduced to a single myopic, undesirable narrative. But the mind still persists. What if Africa somehow escaped the assault of colonialism? And I love that term that Lupita used, an assault, because imperialism and the resulting evil that accompanied it was an assault. Yes, it was an assault on the progress and psychology of an entire people, which spurned the lie told often until it became an unquestioned truth to some that Africa was a dark place, devoid of achievement, skill, complexity, intelligence, but we know better, and some involved in the lie knew better as well. And I will quote a French philosopher, Constantin de Volney, who on a visit to Egypt in 1787 would put it beautifully. Just think, he declared incredulously, that this race of black men today our slave and the object of our scorn is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of speech. Just imagine, Africa was set up as the antithesis of Western civilization, an unknown into which this insecure imperial mind could peer for assurance about their superior positions in the hierarchy of nature. I read that somewhere, and I'm paraphrasing it here, because you can see the injustice of how Africa has been portrayed over the years. Luckily, we live in a world free of the single clutch of the 18th and 19th century biased historian looking to distort, destroy, and utterly deny any evidence of African people's intelligence and competence. Their hold has been broken. The last vestiges of their legacy of lies is crumbling down. It is now commonly known, as the Greeks knew long ago, that ancient Egypt essentially began as a northern extension of African culture and people. And negative revisionism of history is quickly being challenged by supporters of the true view. Right now, African nations are in the middle of a renaissance, a time when potential is well on its way to full realization. It is a wonderful symphony of creativity, birthing progress, and progress leading to new creativity. Especially in the past few years, there has been a really big change. Global attention has shifted towards Africa. Everywhere, suddenly, nations from east, the west, the north, and the south have suddenly been turned into giant building zones and cities in transformation. Africa's construction boom. I love that headline. And it is being driven by recent rapid economic growth. Governments everywhere are making strides to attract investment and industrialize economies in order to build on an already strong middle class. New projects worth billions of dollars, including new roads, railways, massive power generation schemes across the continent, and not to mention ambitious infrastructural projects, are springing up everywhere at astounding rates. Much in the way Dubai has transformed its region, many countries in Africa are vying to be the pinnacle of the continent. So it is a wonderfully good-natured competition with eye-catching architectural buildings, what with the structural transformation of cities, skyscrapers going up everywhere, each with unique architectural designs. And it is not just real estate that's booming. There is also technological advances as well. To quote a TED Talk given by Marcelo Schirmer in Vienna, I hope I got his name right, He said, all over across Africa, entrepreneurs are building global businesses by solving local problems. There is the Africa Startup Revolution, which may be a thing to Google up later if you've never heard of it. And you will witness how major European and American companies are flying out to many sub-Saharan countries to seek out consultations. All over, African entrepreneurs are innovating businesses that are not only helpful locally, but have global ramifications and relevance. Places like Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, and on are leading the way in becoming technological giants. Many African nations have stable and growing economies and are a nurturing environment for technological advancement. So there is plenty of development in the area of information technology, and many African nations are showing the promise of being future technology giants. So we see the Wakandan dream in full effect. Another thing I love about the Black Panther movie is that it isn't shy about confronting issues in the world, taking on evil in all its forms, whether imperialism, inequality, greed, and on. The sense of a wholesome community is on full display, and to quote Lupita Nyong'o, citizens realize their fullest potential. I love that we see women alongside men in their power and making a difference to the future of their nation in a very exemplary manner. So as we watch the Black Panther movie and glimpse into this idyllic setting, my hope and prayer is that it lights the way in showing all of us how to develop the harmonious world of Wakanda. So Black Panther will be revolutionary. In fact, it was a revolutionary concept born in the civil rights era, and the comic reflected the politics of that time. Black Panther was a symbol of dignity in the face of they who had been denied the same. So the vehicle of something as simple as a comic was actually an image of hope as well as a promise of a different narrative. The novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie talks about the danger of a single story, about Africa and its people. She spoke about what happens when complex human beings and situations are reduced to a single narrative, when Africans, for example, are treated solely as pitiable. She illustrates this with a story about coming to the United States as a middle-class daughter of a professor and an administrator, and meeting her college roommate. Adichie says that her roommate's default position towards her as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. Her roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. Adichie recounts speaking to an American student who, after reading her novel, centered on an abusive male protagonist, lamented the fact that Nigerian men were abusive. Having just read American Psycho, Adichie returned his pity and called it a shame that all young American men were serial killers. The TED audience where Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie was giving this talk laughed at the absurdity of this generalization, but her point was clear. On a micro level, the danger of a single story is that it prevents people from authentically connecting with people as individuals. So here's to hoping for more cultures represented in mainstream. Also, another amazing thing I will highlight is the harmony depicted in Black Panther and the seamless fusion of future and the past that is so evident in their daily lives. And it is a lesson that one can never really be divorced from their culture and traditions. So seeing this movie embracing and pulling from all cultures all over the continent is a true joy. It is an amazing thing to see this cast and what they brought to this film. We see men who are strong, masculine, respected, while elevating women, and also exciting to see women able to actualize their potential. Women patterned after the footsteps of great women and mothers on the continent who through the years had even led entire armies to war and even were elite female warriors. The idea that we have fully realized female leads in this movie and a chance to see more varied representations of beauty and not just one type or standard of beauty is one more thing that is cause for celebration. So I'm glad once more that the Black Panther movie reflects African aesthetic diversity, which is uncharted, not only from the current time period, but from ancient cultures as well. And I'll take a small detour here and talk about the kingdom of ancient Egypt. As we talk about African beauty and culture, let's discuss the famed bust of this ancient queen in particular. Often we are told of her that she was either an Arab or a European. I wonder how many of you actually caught that the third black and white image was that of former model Iman. Maybe some of you are like, yeah, so what? She's Somali, and maybe questioning whether they're even real Africans. Why, I may inquire, what do you mean by real African? The answer sometimes tends to sound like this. Because they have features that are more like Arabs or European, not like real Africans. So what is a real African? Here are pictures of other Africans from the continent, some from tribes like the Turkana, Maasai, Kikuyu, Fulani, Pokot, and on and on. In this debate, people have discounted African diversity, handpicking one archetypal African group and making that one group the definition of what it means to be really African. But what we see is, in reality, different eye colors, hair textures, facial features. Africans can be fair-skinned or rich, deep chocolate. Some have even the epicanthic fold, others have round eyes, some have wide features, others have very narrow ones. So if after looking at all these Africans and it's not clear who the real Africans are, then please let the real Africans stand up. So I'm going to cut back in here and I'm going to talk about a theme that is prevalent in Black Panther, the film and the comics, and that is one of community and a nation that is deeply rooted in culture. And I felt like that was a great segue as any to have a very targeted conversation with those of you who are part of, the great African diaspora, and especially those of you who were in your ancestors forcibly removed from the continent. And I know that is a very deep conversation to have, but this film has warranted it. I feel like it's a good time to talk about this. So it stood out to me that those who made the film were talking about the great sense of Pan-Africanism as they made the film. And, just seeing all these people of African descent, whether they were from the continent or from Europe or from, the United States, Central or South America, the Caribbean, and on. And they felt such a closeness. And something Michael B. Jordan said really stood out to me. He said that after watching this film, that he realized we are so much more closer than even he expected. And something he said really touched me, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to read a small portion of it. And he said, "The conversation between African Americans and Africans, the disconnect for such a long time of not feeling close to the continent, or that we didn't have that much in common, or even from the UK and the US, there was a bridge. It felt like there was a gap that was there. But we are so much closer together. And generationally speaking, our generation is gonna start to talk more. I feel there will be more trips back and forth to the continent. There's gonna be much more of a bond. I'm really curious of the conversations that will stem from that after watching this film. After watching this film, I was like, I need to go to Ghana. Now, Zimbabwe. I need to see what it's like. I need to go invest and buy something, connect. I wonder how many people will feel the exact same way and what is going to happen to future generations to come. So this is a really special project." So what he said really touched me. So I'm glad that this film, Black Panther, has given us this chance to talk about this. And I hope that the line of communication will stay open and that we will be able to build that sense of Pan-Africanism for we people of African descent, whether we are people on the continent, notwithstanding any border or tribe or any continent, we are one. And I hope and pray we will never forget that term, the Bantu, the people, and always see the personhood in one another. Here is some food for thought. Some of these monuments with features that have been deemed real African features are still under debate. We see the pharaoh of the Great Pyramid sporting, in quotes, the real African look. So why hasn't this legacy been ceded to sub-Saharan Africans? Because he looks like handsome John Boyega to me. Yet we see that history has been racialized to an extent. The first pharaoh of ancient Egypt who united the Lower and Upper Egypt, who himself came from Upper Egypt, and that is the Lower Sudan region and not near the Mediterranean. This pharaoh had a stereotypical African face, who we are taught in pseudoscience makes you somewhat inherently inferior. Not saying that every Egyptian was black, because as a huge civilization it attracted immigration and invasion as well. But I'm specifically talking based on the evidence of they who carved these monuments in that time. Surely a people who could align their structures with the various constellations to mind-boggling precision were able to carve a simple sculpture with accuracy, don't you think? So what does a real African look like? Because we will not be pigeonholed or dictated to the sum total of what we can present as. The days of dividing and conquering Africans are over. As far as I know, we on the continent at one point were once Hamites. Therefore, whether Ethiopian, Somali, Eritrean, or whichever other type of people any kind of study or pseudoscience would try to isolate, we can still say that we are family and related. We do know that there are Ethiopians and also a community called Igbo in Nigeria who have Jewish admixture. But one thing that cannot be denied, not only of them but for anyone else who may share a mixture of heritage, one thing that can never be denied is the African shared ancestry. So the truth is out there if you want to seek it. Yet it is amazing the mental gymnastics that are called upon to deny the achievements of Africans, not only in the study of Africa and its past, but you are called upon to believe that they categorized as Bantu had no part in history, and there is empirical evidence all over to the contrary. For example, evidence shows common elements between Africans in sub-Sahara today and ancient Egyptians, undeniable cultural influence they shared that repeated itself in various forms over and over again. In African anthropology, it has been seen that many local communities have had for thousands of years the same practices that were long obscured until the light of an archaeologist's torch brought them into the public sphere as they gazed upon splendid works of art on ancient Egyptian murals long buried away. Yet with unfettered bias that would have you believe that these are happy coincidences that are serendipitous in nature. But this is empirical evidence, that which is measurable and repeatable, that turns hypothesis into fact. It is hard to disprove that. We see these images over and over again, yet somehow you are made to believe that ancient Egypt had nothing to do with Bantu Africans. So do you remember this headline? How many of you know that the mummies studied were taken from only one area with a known Levantine immigrant community? Yet look how it was presented. I found only one article that gave an asterisk that the study was from one controlled Levantine population in ancient Egypt. What a shame that was for professionalism. So it is a pity that at times even history has been racialized. So let's have another observational study. We see here the family tree of the famous boy king. Taking into account these pictures, it would appear that the subject of these images knew how they wanted to be depicted. And you can see the replication of features and tone, and it flows seamlessly. Yet, when new recent studies come out, science is thrown out of the window. What's wrong with knowing that in some periods of history that you are studying African history? Oh well. It brings me to this point. Nat Geo came out with their story, The Black Pharaohs, a few years ago, begging the question then who were the very first pharaohs of the Old Kingdom? You know, they who built the pyramids and so on? Exactly my point. Ancient Egypt, at its heart, was an African civilization. Maybe as time progressed with subsequent invasions by the Hyksos, Persians, Romans, Greeks, and later the Arabs ensured that they had other foreign citizens and rulers, and we also know that ancient Egypt attracted immigration. But one thing that cannot be denied is the truth and the timeline that depicts the facts of an African civilization. And now we challenge the low IQ lie Other pseudoscience was that Africans and people of African descent were supposed to have the lowest IQ. Tell that to one pharaoh, who many are unable to deny was of African descent, Taharka, who would be a modern-day South Sudanese man. Or any one of these guys, remember the figure with the real African features? Maybe they were the white blacks. What of the Shona who built Great Zimbabwe, whose outer wall was constructed with 100,000 granite bricks without any cement? Or what of the Ethiopians or the Swahili, or the people of Nigeria, Mali, Congo, not to mention the countless people of African descent worldwide who have far outpaced their peers? This is an Aristotle quote, and he spoke it at the time when they who were in power, who are now deemed, according to that Nat Geo article, as the Black Pharaohs. Why did the famed European scholars of the past go to Africa to learn in ancient Egypt if they were so low IQ? But anyway, as the saying goes in Swahili, njia ya mwongo ni mfupi, which is to say the liar's road is a short one, or a more common phrase, the truth will out. The truth will always prevail. And I love the saying that lies run sprints, but truth runs marathons. And for the lie we say, time is up. The African continent is home to 7 of the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Foreign direct investment is rapidly increasing. European and Chinese companies of all sizes recognized the African opportunity early on and have had a head start. Producing almost 2 million barrels of oil per day, Angola is recognized as sub-Saharan Africa's second largest oil producer behind Nigeria, as well as a world-class area for oil exploration and production. It is likely that in the coming years, there will be many more African businesses built around supporting the burgeoning internet ecosystem in Africa, providing web consulting services ranging from site design to search engine optimization services. The continent is also known for its abundance in natural resources, which includes 90% of the world's platinum, 50% of the world's gold, 70% of the world's coltan, which the majority of cell phones around the world use, and 30% of the world's diamond reserves. It is projected that Africa's population, which is the youngest, will become more affluent. Africa is known for its dominant share in the number of sought-after commodities such as platinum, chrome, gold, cobalt, oil that are in great demand. All in all, African businesses are becoming increasingly attractive for local and foreign investors. So speaking to my brothers and sisters of African descent from all over the world, it is time for you to challenge the negative narratives that have been pushed, especially to you, concerning Africa with the words unsafe, unclean, and just any kind of term to cause you to steer away. It is time for you to invest in your home where you are loved and accepted, and put your money where it will have longevity. It is time for you to build your Africa. So I'll ask a question. What if you could have invested in Dubai when it was in its first stages of development? Just think. And what if Africa turns out to be the Dubai of the world? By God's grace, we hope it will. So I hope as these images play that it is a soul-searching moment for everyone. So I would encourage my brothers and sisters all over the world of African descent that this is the time for you to invest in your ancestral homeland. This is your home, and it is time for you to put your dollars where it will have longevity. It is time for you to build your Africa. So thank you for watching this with me. I'm glad you made it till the end of this video. Thank you for watching this. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to know your thoughts. And once more, be sure to click like, subscribe. Also, remember my hashtag Black Panther Royal, where send in your photos. I would love to make that video montage, so this is your chance if you want to be a part of it. I've launched my Patreon, so be sure to go check that out as well. Thank you for watching this with me once again, and I will catch you in my next one. God bless.